Hello and good morning. My name is Manfredi Bargioni and I'm your host for today's webinar. I will wait 1 more minute for the late joiners to arrive and then we'll start. Okay, we can start. Welcome again. This is one of our webinars. In all our webinars, we always try to give practical, realistic ideas about how to impact the bottom line of your business, essentially, through reducing costs, increase profitability, but most of all, increase efficiency. In our webinars today, we look at how to power up your PMO performance in 5 simple steps. 5 simple ideas, which some of them, might be known to you, but can be very powerful if implemented in the correct way to make the PMO not only an administrator, but a business driver within your organization. Let's start by saying that obviously the PMO challenge is not easy. If project management is like herding cats, the PMO is a person who's herding cats who are herding cats. It's really difficult for the PMO to balance the need for a disciplined approach that helps structure the way we perform our projects across an organization with the necessity to avoid too many constraints on the project managers themselves who still have to do their jobs and probably being on the ground are the persons who know the most about what's really going on in the project. So the PMO challenge is to find a balance between this control and the excessive constraint. An effective PMO can lead to great results. Effective utilization of lessons learned and best practice in standardizing the way we approach our projects can increase gross margin up to 10 percentage points. So a big impact on the bottom line on an organization. So today we are going to talk about these 5 steps for boosting your PMO. We're going to have a short demo just to see how we can move from the theory of these ideas to a practice, and then a brief case study, a real-life example of how following some of these steps can lead to great result within an organization. So let's move to step 1 of our 5-step program, creating a common language. A language is not just a means of communicating, but it's a shared knowledge and the capacity to translate something to other people who might be coming from different experience from ourselves. So the ability to communicate properly our knowledge is a key component of making teams work together. Anybody who ever tried to order bangers and chips in a US restaurant will know that sometimes even simple tasks can be perceived very differently across different cultures. So what you need to communicate effectively with other people, you need a platform of shared knowledge. You need common metrics that can be referred together to give a common sense of what is that we want to achieve. Methodology that are standardized so that everybody can follow the same type of methodologies in implementing similar things. Benchmark and standards that are defined that can be used to evaluate the performance, for instance, of projects across a portfolio, leading to a common understanding of what is required to be successful, and a common understanding that can be shared with other people. Teams are often made of participants coming from different backgrounds within an organization, consultants that are external to the organization itself and maybe are added to a specific project for a particular reason, even customers, representatives that are part of the successful project. And all these people coming from different backgrounds, different experience, need to be able to share a common understanding of what a project is and what a success for the project means. We've seen many situations where even a simple task was understood differently from different people. This is also why, for instance, project managers learn PMI and other project management techniques, because those are shared knowledge that can be used to guide projects. So step 2, centralize your resource planning. Your resources are probably your biggest cost and definitely your crucial success factor. So your ability as a PMO to deploy your resources efficiently is a key to your success, not in terms of delivering one project, but delivering efficiently across your whole portfolio. Without a proper centralized and structured resource planning process, you end up a bit like this. Resource planning becomes a big brawl where who shouts the loudest, who grabs the resources first, basically comes out the winner. A highly politicized process which is not very conducive to an efficient deployment of your resources across your organization. The result is essentially a constant firefighting trying to solve problems that come up because of your resources are not efficiently deployed. So as a PMO, it's very important to take central control of the planning, so that's step one, but also to have a process based on objectives and measurables assessment of resources and skills available versus the resources and skills that are needed to deliver certain tasks, certain activities, certain projects. Essentially, the PMO needs to control resources as they're often the biggest bottleneck in the way you can deliver your portfolio. This requires discipline, a culture of control and measuring result. So again, we're talking about creating a process, not simply having a person who's in charge of resource planning. It's about having a standardized structure and the ability, especially, to react dynamically to changes. We constantly face a situation that's shifting, that's changing. New projects coming in, delays in existing projects, change of priority. So the ability to deal with reality, with the real availability of resources, with real problems happening on the ground versus an idealized world, it's very important. And this ability to react dynamically is crucial to face the bottlenecks and then react accordingly in terms of your planning structure. Step number 3, learn from your mistakes. Now this obviously is very important. If you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat your problems and your mistakes. It's true for an individual. Each of us obviously have to learn from our mistakes. It's even truer about an organization. The organization needs to be structured in a way, and the PMO is crucial in this, to absorb data and lessons from our previous projects, from our previous history, and then apply them to the future. It's about creating an historical frame of reference to help us understand what is happening. Without metrics of previous performance, historical data, we don't have perspective, and it's easy to be tricked into mistaking things. Benchmarks allow information to be used to forecast and planning. Without historical benchmarks, it's very difficult to have a forecast that is very, more than 2-3 days ahead, and a planning that is consistent to a proper use of our resources. Obviously, our ability to plan is strongly correlated to the quality of the data we receive, which leads to a next step, the better data. We all know the old adage of the fact that rubbish in, rubbish out. Unless you have good quality data, you're not going to have good quality information. So obviously you are dependent on chasing the proper data. But already too much time in any PMO organization is spent in chasing information, calling project managers for an update, endless weekly meeting on how the project is performing, big Excel spreadsheet with a lot of numbers, which are easily doctored. Not because, people want to lie, but simply because you end up being optimistic. But an optimistic view of the reality is inaccurate, unreliable, and when you have many optimistic project managers, you end up with a portfolio which is completely unrealistic and very dangerous. So it's crucial for the PMO to have access to real-time data and data that can be trusted. Again, automated process, standardized process, as opposed to a personalized one-off approach to collecting data. Obviously, data that needs to be transformed into information to drive business decision. Often the PMO role is the one of spotting problems before they occur. Obviously, not all problems can be solved. Some of them need to be addressed in terms of changing the priority or sometimes making hard business decisions. But only with correct data and correct information, the PMO can be a driver for this business decision. And then this leads us to our last step, but mostly the most important one. Time is precious. Resources of a PMO are scarce, and they need to be invested where it really matters, when they can really make a difference. Too often, the PMOs, but in any other way of life is the same thing, behave a bit like headless chicken, chasing around too many things and diluting their attention. That is very dangerous, because in the end, we pay not enough attention to the crucial thing because we don't know which are our priority. So we need to understand our priority, but obviously the question is, how do I assess correctly my priority? How can I spot the things that are important before they occur? Essentially, it's all a question of, again, data and understanding of what's happening around me. We often concentrate too much on lagging indicators, things that tell us what happened before, but not enough time paying attention to leading indicators, things that are telling what's happening in the near future. And obviously that's the key, because what is currently a steady as it goes situation can rapidly transform in a very dangerous issue. So if we are not able to spot in advance what's going to happen, we can find ourselves in dire straits very quickly. So the PMO should focus on value-added activities, not on chasing information. Often, unfortunately, the PMO is seen as an administrative duty, collecting information, putting together reports, and passing them on. But that's not really an added value. So what the value of the PMO and the impact that the PMO can have on a business is really in helping solving problems, supporting project managers who have a problem and giving them best practices and ensuring that these best practices are implemented in a correct way within the organization. It's about being proactive in addressing issues before they impact negatively, spotting them in advance and acting them before they explode into a bigger problem. It's about not only monitoring the performance, but really improving it. So moving from being just a monitor, an administrator, to a business driver. If all these things take place, then the PMO basically helps the business make sure that all projects are successful on time and budget and have a positive impact on the organization. As an idea, we like to use an analogy of the network services. How do small operation centers manage to overlook and monitor thousands and thousands of devices in the telecom or IT industry? Servers, computers, routers, you name it. It's impossible to monitor each one of them. So what the operation center does is essentially creates alerts and thresholds in terms of performance, storage capacity, heat, security, everything that is important. And when a threshold is exceeded, meaning that maybe it's not a problem yet, but it's going to be a problem, an alert is triggered. And then the team in the operations center can go and monitor and possibly fix the problem. So fixing problems before they occur, concentrating your attention on the problems that are coming, not on monitoring everything, because it's impossible to be monitoring everything. Moving the analogy to the PMO is what we call PMO by exception, essentially empowering the PMO to focus on the activities that bring value to the company. If we have benchmarks, if we have historical references, if we have a blueprint that gives us the idea of what a project should be, then we can drive thresholds and alerts based on expected time of delivery, expected costs or financials, expected quality of a certain task, a certain activity, a certain projects. And only when these thresholds are exceeded or close to it, then we receive an alert. And then the PMO can spend time, instead of chasing information, on focusing on these issues, monitoring them, intervention, resolution, or maybe escalation if it's a problem that needs to be dealt at a higher level. So the key is really using the resources of the PMO in a clever way, focusing on the problems, not on simply monitoring the day-to-day. This can happen only if you possess what we mentioned in the 5 steps, the ability to create a reference benchmark and then monitor what's really happening on the ground. At this point, I would like to pass the presentation to my colleague James to talk about an example of how we can apply these 5 steps in reality.
Thank you very much, Manfredi. I'll just get the demo loaded up here. And we'll be looking at, of course, some of these 1 to 5 key focus points for PMO in a practical example using a piece of software. So I should just be sharing the screen with you now. I'm actually looking at a cloud product called Hydra PSA here. Fantastic. So I'm logged in here. This is just in a web browser. Just to come out of here, I'll just show you what that looks like. I'm just in Google Chrome, but this works on any Windows or Mac machine, any modern web browser. I won't go into the technical details, but I'm logged in as a demo company called Ardi. That's what we're going to be looking at here. And you'll notice across the top, there's a number of different sections. So this piece of software is used for project management, but we'll be focusing on more of the project management office PMO features today. So I can see that we have a number of sections I have access to across the top. Now the key one that I'd like to focus on is blueprints. Now step 1 that you heard Manfredi go through earlier was creating a common language, and that's very key to us, very important that we can capture the best practice on how to deliver a certain type of project. In this particular example, there's 4 different what we call blueprints set up here. Each has things like tasks, reports, checklists, knowledge and guidance, things like approval stages, and other sort of typical elements that you find within project management as well, in order to deliver a type of project from end to end. And that's what we call a blueprint. It's much more than what you may consider a template, for example. Just to have a look at what a blueprint actually contains, maybe if we take our network infrastructure blueprint here. Now this has been created to give us everything we need to, again, create a project very, very quickly. Now we have things called deliverables, things that we might be delivering for, say, a customer within this project, activities, the roles that go into this. So these are project manager tasks, these are engineer tasks, for example, tasks that go into making up that project as well. For example, maybe a sign-off. It may have sort of checklists within that, approval stages within that, custom field data, and importantly, instructions, the last tab you'll see here. That's really, really important to us as part of the knowledge capture. So I won't spend any time going through building a blueprint, of course, but I think it would be good to leave you with the idea that a blueprint contains lots of elements, and it's all about capturing the best practice. So I'd like to then move on to our PMO section, which is effectively us being able to have visibility and control over our portfolio of projects. We have some demo data here. You could, of course, have hundreds of projects at any one time, but we've just got a few for demonstration purposes here. We can see what that project is, who's project managing it, maybe what the actual cost on that project to date could be, and these are sort of real-time driven values. It's very important to have visibility of project cost. Possibly some additional information we're capturing as well. We can also have a look at progress for these projects, how they're doing in terms of a RAG status perhaps, its planned progress versus its actual progress, maybe even planned versus actuals in terms of hours where we're deviating, where we're up or down on sort of the actuals there. So this is quite useful. We also have some other figures around costs and revenue tracking at this level as well, also some checkpoints. And what I will do as part of this demonstration towards the end is have a look at some of the reporting that you can get at a PMO level. But what I'm just going to do is dive into one of these projects here. We'll have a look at this site installation project, just to give you a quick flavor of what a project contains when it's running. We won't go into too much detail about how it's actually managed, but you get some typical project management stuff in here. Schedules that we'll have a look at in a minute. That's your Microsoft project style, Gantt views and work breakdown structures. risk capture, focus on deliverables as well, perhaps task health and tracking of tasks in a sort of a list view here, as well as project finances too. Just having a quick look at some of the schedules. We can have multiple schedules or just one if you wish. And this particular schedule that I've just gone into here is showing us a project plan. Now what you can do in the PMO area is create a project based on the blueprint, and it creates everything you need for a project manager to hit the ground running, get started with the tasks they need to do, and just care about managing by exception and making sure that the work is done according to cost and in the most efficient way possible. So this is quite typical of your project plan view, again, perhaps, and also the work breakdown structure too. So we've got tasks here, checkpoints, activities, and maybe even deliverables as well. So for example, in this case, this is sort of the initiation part of this project, where we've done some work, preparation work. We've actually done a pilot site where we can sort of see that those tasks are now complete. One of them had an approval stage, and we can start capturing information on what duration and effort both the project manager planned and what actually happened in practice. Now this is all well and good from a project management standpoint, but I'd just very quickly like to come out and show you in this MySpace area what the resources themselves will end up seeing. So in my assignments, this is where any task that's been assigned to somebody, whether they be an engineer, maybe the project manager themselves, you know, a surveyor, a consultant, you name it, doesn't matter. But they will be able to see their list of tasks that they have, and they will be able to put some time in against those tasks. But just before they do that, we can start to get some information back from the blueprint and the project on how something is done, what we like to call the knowledge management part of a task. So we need to call a key contact here and initiate the installation, but maybe there's some things that we need to do to be able to do that correctly in the way that this company, RD Solutions, has devised. You can click on the guide, and I'm logged in as Steve here, and Steve can get access to the guide that's baked into the blueprint about how he should be delivering or doing this task, how he should be initiating the installation. So this information is obviously something that can be defined. There's text in here, images, maybe screenshots perhaps, or even videos if there's a how-to on how to deliver something, as well as checklists that may need to be ticked off, or also maybe some information that we need to capture, possibly document templates that we need to download and upload a version back. All of this is captured in the blueprint and then is available for every running project, with the idea that if somebody needs a reminder on how to do something, it's there. If someone needs to absolutely, you know, follow the right steps, they have that available. There is no reason why the quality of a project cannot be improved with this kind of level of knowledge management just behind it. We can of course put time logs in, complete tasks, the typical stuff you would expect from a project management tool such as this, but I won't go into that just now. So we've had a look at the PMO area, looking at the projects, having a very quick look at what is contained within a project. We've had a look at blueprinting. That's obviously very important. The concept of, you know, creating that common language, that's step one that we looked at. So that's quite important. But we also need to have a look at resourcing. So let's have a quick look at that. And if I go to our scheduler here, we can actually have a look at across the whole portfolio projects that we're running within this business, and let's zoom in all the way actually, because we can get very granular information on who's working on what at any one time. You'll notice that we have a number of resources along the left here. This list could be hundreds long. You've got filtering tools to be able to view just the resources on a certain project or with certain skills. Skills that you'll notice on the left here is a very important concept of what we do as well. But here you'll be able to see all of the resources and everything they're working on at any one time, so that you'll be able to see for a particular day, particular week, exactly where the gaps are in your sort of availability and utilization. So we can fire up the histogram here, and in fact, let me just put this in full screen and make it look a bit better. We can see all of the resources where they are in terms of what tasks they're working on and which projects, what allocation and assignment percentages they have, and also how utilized they are on any particular time frame. So we can actually see the gaps here. Obviously, you know, Sarah here it's just demo data. It's a little bit light perhaps, but you can see where the gaps would be. You can also zoom in to get a much better view of this across weeks, months, quarters, years, that sort of stuff. So the resourcing part is very important, and we fully cater for that within Hydra PSA. Now, the last thing I'd just like to have a look at very quickly is our PMO reporting. So we have a report section. This can cover both what we call company dashboards, which are typically used by the project management office or by directors or higher. And there are also project dashboards specifically for the project manager. I won't look at them, but one key thing to mention actually with the blueprinting is reports will come through for a project manager based on how the blueprint works. But let's have a look at the PMO dashboard here just to finish up. And this has been configured in the way I want it to be configured. It can be changed with different widgets, different layouts. It can be exported to a PDF or sent at any sort of frequency to different email addresses if you wish. But this one's just been configured to show me a list of our sort of projects that we have here, their progress, their cost, and maybe some budget information. What sort of split of projects that we've got that are running live right now, that we're working on in draft. So perhaps we're sort of doing some forecasting work and seeing how they might fit within our current resource availability, for example, or maybe the ones that we've closed off in a certain period. We can also have a look at some examples here that show maybe our CPI or SPI indicators, that's cost performance indicators, and how our projects are doing in terms of their cost. Or maybe, as you can see on the left-hand side here, this is being set up to show us all the different deliverables that we are delivering within our live projects for any project that's based off our network infrastructure blueprint. And you'll be able to see the different projects here, but how we're doing in terms of the progress of a particular thing we're delivering for a customer, its status, who's responsible for it, and so on. You can also get lists of tasks and risks and other sorts of information from projects across the whole portfolio from this view. And you can, of course, have many different dashboards to cater for different scenarios and setups. You can also just have there's some risks down here. Also have a look at alerts. So adherence to best practice is quite key for us. Being able to see where project managers are deviating from that best practice, perhaps deleting a mandatory task that the blueprint says should always be done, but perhaps on some occasions isn't, surfacing that visibility and getting visibility of those sort of deviations is very important. And you can sort of get some of that information through these dashboards. So that's all I wanted to show you really. A very, very brief look at Hydra PSA in terms of some of its PMO functions and features. And I'll just pass back to our presentation now to round off the webinar.
Thank you, James. That was very helpful. So we've seen basically some of our concept put into practice in an environment. The idea is that to drive the project management office to be a business driver, to manage by exception, and to concentrate on the things that are really important. One thing that I would like to show you now is a quick case study from one of our customers. You probably know Polycom. It's a global telecom company. They manufacture telecom technology for all around the world. They use Hydra for the deployment of the top-end telepresence solution, which are a highly complex solution involving a lot of materials. These are the rooms that look like a bit like Star Trek when people can have virtual meeting across the globe. One important metrics for them is from the PMO performance is a measurement of the project efficiency of their PMs. It's very important that they can deliver on time when the customer expects and when the budget is supposed to hit the road, essentially. So very important for them is the ability to onboard new project managers as quickly as possible. Because obviously this makes sure that they have the capacity to respond to their customer demands and deliver their projects on time. One of the challenges they have is that they needed to grow, good challenge to have, hiring a lot of new project managers, but making sure they were going to perform as quickly as possible within a given time frame. So one of the things they use Hydra for is having their collective knowledge downloaded essentially in Hydra, learning from their past experience, from the best practices they have as a company, and from the knowledge of the best individual, the most expert on those particular activities. They were able to start from a situation where a new PMs took about 18 months, 1/8, to come into the level of performance they expected of them, and reduce that to only 3 months. So basically, in the first quarter, the new PMs were able to achieve the top performance status in terms of performance measured by their KPI, which was essentially a business KPI of delivery on time of the projects. So suddenly the PMO was not only a measurer, but was actually having a full-blown impact on the bottom line of the business, because all the new PMO managers were suddenly the top performer of the team. So this is a good example of how putting together good data, shared knowledge, historical performance, and then the ability of PMO to transmit it to a team, in this case to new people who were not familiar with the type of project that Polycom was delivering. So they were able to transmit it very successfully and very quickly. So to summarize the webinar today, we looked at 5 key steps to improve the power of your PMO. First of all, the creation of shared knowledge, a proper platform and a common language that can allow everybody to work in the same direction in the best possible way, leveraging the best practices that you have within your organization. Step number 2, centralized resource planning to achieve increased efficiency and create a better process to allocate resources across your portfolio. Step number 3, the use of data, of historical information to learn from our past and reduce future mistakes. But obviously, step number 4, the quality of the data we use to do this process is crucial. So we need a system and a way to ensure that our data is of real time, is high quality, and can be used in the best possible way. And last but not least, focus the resources of PMO on the important things. Excuse me. Doing PMO by exception, focusing on crucial items, but using a system that triggers and alerts you when your attention is needed. Otherwise, you will end up spreading your resources too thin and being ineffective in what is really the crucial aspects of the PMO activity. So thank you very much for attending this webinar. If you have any question, you can write it in the comment section. I'll give you just a few seconds if somebody has any question to ask. Okay, I have one question here. The question is, in relation to the example of the network service center versus the PMO by exception, what is the risk of missing something important? Because maybe an alert is not focusing on a correct item. Obviously, that's a good question. Our experience is that obviously from day one, you don't necessarily know all that is important in your projects. It's a bit of a learning experience. You probably have a good idea of the key aspects of deliverables or risks or issues or indicators that, based on your experience, trigger, the red light saying maybe something is not right here. At the same time, you probably are missing some of them. As a PMO, you need to be flexible and again learn from history. When you start doing a proper tracking of alerts and a proper tracking of issues across the projects, this historical information will enforce your ability to really, for the future projects, to spot what's going on. So we always like to think as a PMO of a journey. You start, but you never end. You improve and you learn new things that you have to do. I have another questions. The question, are there any blueprints that come out of the box? Well, the answer is not really, in the sense that we work with our customers. Every customer, obviously, we have customers from in the IT industry, finance, construction, public sector. So obviously, every customer has different types of projects, different kinds of services. Our usual way of doing things is to sit down with our customers, especially the initial implementation, and look with them at what their crucial processes are, and then help them document them into the blueprint. Obviously, we are not expert in construction or in finance. We are expert in helping people do blueprint. So what we do, we facilitate the downloading, if you want, of the knowledge of a customer, often in a methodology, in documentation, the experience of the top people, and we facilitate the process of creating the blueprints based on their best practices. We don't pretend to be expert in everything. What we know, what we do very well, and obviously what our products do very well, is taking this knowledge that in every organization there is a lot of knowledge. Some of this is explicit, documented. Some of them is probably in the head of some people, which is also a risk for the organization if these people leave. So what we do is that we help the organization put this down and then create blueprints based on this. Okay, this concludes our session. Thank you very much for participating to our webinar. If you want any other information, please email us, check our website. We are very happy to talk to you about what we've discussed today and any other ideas that you might have on the matter. So thank you very much. You will receive other invitations from for future webinars, which we hope you're going to attend. And we are going to also receive a little feedback questionnaire. If you are enjoying this webinar, please give us a good rating. So it will make us very happy. If you have any suggestions on future webinars or other ideas, again, please send us an email. So thank you very much, and bye-bye.